Hey guys, I'm Meoang, and welcome back to my beginner's guide to Starcraft 2. Today we're going to be discussing Zerg's tech tree and all of their units. Zerg's tech tree has three clear phases. There's hatchery tech, lair tech, and hive tech. Your bases can go from a hatchery to a lair and then to a hive in order to enable certain units and buildings. When the game starts, the only units you can make are drones and overlords. Overlords are the slow flying units that give Zerg supply. Once you reach lair tech, they can generate creep, evolve ventral sacs for drops, and morph to overseers. Overseers are detectors. They can drop a unit called a changeling that disguises itself as an enemy unit. They can also contaminate structures so that the structure cannot produce units or do research. Overlords and overseers can move faster once you research pneumatized carapace at the hatchery. You can also research the ability to burrow your ground units at the hatchery. At the beginning of the game, you can construct hatcheries, extractors, evolution chambers, and a spawning pool. Evolution chambers are buildings that Zerg uses to research upgrades for their ground units. You can research melee attacks, missile attacks, and carapace, which is defense. Each upgrade has 3 levels. Once you produce a spawning pool, you can morph larvae into Zerglings and you can construct several new buildings. You can also start to create queens directly from your hatcheries. Queens are an incredibly important spellcaster unit for Zerg. The queen has decent defense and offense and can attack both air and ground. What makes the queen so important though are the 3 spells that it has. The first is Spawn Creep Tumor, which is how you spread your creep around the map. It can be spawned anywhere on creep, and after a short cooldown, that creep tumor can be used to spawn another one. The second is Spawn Larva. This is the ability that lets you accumulate larvae at your hatcheries. The queen just has to use the ability on a hatchery, and after a short time, the larva will be available for use. It's incredibly important to make sure that all of your hatcheries are constantly spawning larvae throughout the game. The last ability is Transfusion, which heals a target biological unit or structure. Zerglings are tiny melee units that move very quickly. They spawn in pairs and need high numbers to do any significant damage. At the spawning pool, you can research Metabolic Boost, which increases the movement speed of Zerglings, and once you reach Hive Tech, you can also research Adrenal Glands, which increases the attack speed of Zerglings. After the spawning pool is finished, you can construct a Roach Warren, a Baneling Nest, Spine Crawlers, and Spore Crawlers. You can also morph your hatchery into a lair. Spine Crawlers are ground static defense that only attack ground units. They can uplift themselves and reburrow themselves at will, but it's a slow process. Spore Crawlers are static defense that only attack air units, and they can also reposition themselves. The Baneling Nest allows Zerglings to be morphed into Banelings. It has one upgrade you can research once you reach lair tech, which is Centrifugal Hooks, and it increases the movement speed of Banelings. Banelings are small ground units that explode either when they die, when they attack, or whenever you want them to. They deal high area of effect damage around where they exploded, and they're incredibly effective against enemy grounded light units, and they can also bust down enemy walls. The Roach Warren allows larvae to be morphed into roaches. The Roach Warren has 2 upgrades that can be researched when you reach lair tech. Glial Reconstitution increases the movement speed of roaches, and Tunneling Claws allows roaches to move while burrowed and also increases their life regeneration while burrowed. Roaches have decent defense and decent damage. They can only attack other ground units and are usually used early to mid-game to round out your army. They heal faster when burrowed and can morph into Ravagers. Ravagers have less life than roaches, but more range. They have an ability called Corrosive Bile that does damage in a small area after a delay. This ability can hit both ground and air units, but can also hit your own units. It's extremely effective against stationary enemies like siege tanks and liberators. Once you morph your hatchery into a lair, it opens up several new buildings that can be constructed. The Ultralisk Den, the Infestation Pit, the Spire, and the Nidus Network. The Nidus Network is used as a transport across great distances for Zerg units. The exit can be placed anywhere where Zerg has vision and creep. Units that go into the network come out of the Nidus Worm at the end. The Ultralisk Den allows larvae to be morphed into Hydralisks, and it has an upgrade for Hydralisks. Muscular Augments increases the attack range of Hydralisks as well as their speed off of creep. The Hydralisk Den can also be morphed into a Lurker Den, which allows Hydralisks to be morphed into Lurkers. Hydralisks have lower health but a very high attack speed. They can hit air and ground units and have the ability to morph into Lurkers. Lurkers are siege units that can only attack while burrowed. They shoot out spikes around them that do damage in that area and do bonus damage to armored enemies. The Spire allows Zerg to start producing air units besides the Overlords. It lets you morph your larvae into Mutalisks and Corruptors. You can also research upgrades for air units at Spires, both for attack and defense. At Hive Tech, they can be morphed into Greater Spires. Mutalisks are fast, flying units that attack both air and ground. They are extremely effective at harassment and multi-pronged attacks, and they perform best in groups. They regenerate life faster than the other Zerg units. Corruptors can only attack other flying units, but they have very good defense and damage. They do extra damage to flying massive units. They have an ability called Caustic Spray, which does channel damage to enemy structures. Once you have a greater spire, they can be morphed into broodlords. The Infestation Pit allows larvae to be morphed into infestors and swarm hosts. It has some upgrades for infestors and also allows your lair to morph into a hive. At the Infestation Pit, you can research pathogen glands, which increases the starting energy of infestors, and you can research Neural Parasite, which enables that ability for infestors. Infestors are a ground spellcaster unit that can move while burrowed. Their first spell is called Fungal Growth. It does damage over time in an area and stuns all enemy units in that area. The second ability spawns an Infested Terran, which is a small ground unit that can attack air and ground. This ability can be used while the infestor is burrowed. The last ability is Neural Parasite, which controls one enemy unit for a short amount of time. Swarm hosts are ground siege units sort of similar to lurkers. They have one ability which can be used while burrowed, called Spawn Locust. It will create 2 locusts at the target location. Locusts are little units that live for a short time. They start flying but must land themselves first to attack. They do decent damage but have very low life. After you morph your lair into a hive, you can build the last few Zerg units and structures. A hive allows your larvae to be morphed into vipers, it allows the construction of Ultralisk Caverns, and it allows your spire to be morphed into a greater spire. Vipers are Zerg's flying spellcaster unit. Their first ability is Consume, which drains the life of your own structure for energy in return. The second ability is Abduct, which pulls the target unit to the Viper. The third ability is Blinding Cloud, which creates a cloud in a target area that reduces the range of enemy units to melee range. The last ability is Parasitic Bomb, which does damage over time to a target enemy as well as enemy air units around that target. The Ultralisk Cavern allows larvae to be morphed into Ultralisks and has one upgrade for Ultralisks. That upgrade is Chitinous Plating, which increases the armor of Ultralisks. Ultralisks are massive ground units that are incredibly tanky and do high amounts of damage in an area in front of them. They are immune to all crowd-controlling effects like stuns and slows. Once a spire is morphed into a greater spire, Corruptors can be morphed into Broodlords. Broodlords are very slow and tanky, massive air units that can only attack ground. They attack by dropping their broodlings, which start to attack ground units and structures near them. And that's every Zerg unit and structure. Some things might still change since Legacy of the Void hasn't launched yet, but I wouldn't expect any general changes for Zerg. Stay tuned for the next guide where we go over the Protoss tech tree. Thanks for watching guys, and good luck learning the game.